I'll keep this short. TrueFire sponsor this channel, and at the moment, for Black Friday, they're running their all access at an incredible discounted price of $79 for a full year of access to every single course. Go check it out. Okay, so I saw this come up. I've been a fan of Joe Bonamassa for quite a while in terms of like his knowledge, sharing information and bits and pieces like that, as well as obviously his amazing playing. And it was like pretty shocking, I think, to hear what happened to him. So if you've not seen this, he basically had to cancel a show due to a sudden hearing issue. During the latter half of the Austin show, my right ear pretty much lost 80% of its high end. For audio folks, it approximately ranges from 600 Hz to about 12K-ish. The advice the doctors both local to Shreveport and my trusted legendary ENT Dr. Joseph Sugarman in Los Angeles gave me was to not be around any loud noises until cleared to do so again. Diagnosis was acute acoustic trauma. Now, the tour has continued with the update that he's about 90% back to where it was before, but he's even started now using earplugs, and this I felt like was worth talking about because just a few months ago I'd read this article where Joe Bonamassa was saying like he felt like one of the issues with in-ear monitors is that you can't get away from them, and that at least on a stage, you know, you can find somewhere where it's slightly quieter. And he's using earplugs now. I particularly like these D'addario earplugs. I asked them if they wanted to sponsor the last video on this. They said no. So they're probably still not. But these are headphones that I actually use. And tonight I'm going to see Robben Ford in Comedia in Bath. So if you're around there, all right, I might say hello. But just a reminder, and I think Joe Bonamassa has found this as well. And I thought it's worth talking about because, like Joe says, we only get one set of ears. And this could happen, you know, this has happened right now for Joe Bonamassa. But you think like that was probably just an every sort of day routine kind of situation, that gig, right? There's nothing about any one particular Joe Bonamassa gig I'd assume that would be that different to any other. It's just that at some point your ears could react pretty drastically to what's happening, and I think that's worth talking about a little bit. I did this sort of hearing test about 2-3 months ago or whatever it was, and I was a little bit worried at first because you can find these hearing tests online, and one of the things that happens as you age is that the high end sort of rolls off anyway. So I was quite worried about this because I grew up kind of deaf, and you know, it took me till I was about 11-ish to have normal-ish hearing, and in those years in between there'd be some times that I'd find it really difficult to hear, and other times, you know, because it was inner ear infections is basically what I had as a kid quite a lot, you know, and to the point that one day my dad called me deaf aid, and I thought that was kind of inappropriate, Dad. But so this is the thing that really matters to me, because I don't want to lose the thing that it took me a while to get. And then obviously, like, if you're a musician, this is kind of, I think, one of your worst nightmares, is losing the thing that, you know, matters to you. Whether it's like tone or just playing or whatever, or listening to other music, I think hearing is really important. Obviously, it doesn't really need to be said, does it? But anyway, so I think probably if you're playing music, you know, or going to gigs as well, is something to bear in mind, this kind of thing, because I think oftentimes if I'm playing a gig, I will remember to take some earplugs, because you're right next to a drummer. They're loud, aren't they? And you'll probably, if you've got an amp, then those can be really loud too if you're trying to compete with a drummer. All of these things happen. If I don't have earplugs, I will use tissue in my ears. I think it's better than nothing. Those apparently might attenuate by about 7 dB. These have, I think these are called D'addario Dbuds. They have this little slider here, which can adjust the amount of attenuation that they're giving. So if I'm playing a gig and I'm on stage is a loose term for what I do in it, I will slide them all the way up so that it's, you know, fully attenuating. Whereas if I was just watching a gig and I'm not right next to the drummer, then I will for sure take these down to sort of like 10. I need to clean these, this is filthy. Gross. Ears are gross, aren't they, in some ways? But yeah, this is the other thing for me, which is like, we and Joe has said this, like, he's a bit of a changed man, and maybe he's being, he's probably joking a little bit, isn't he? He's going to turn his amps down a bit. But the use of earplugs. So if you think about some of the volumes that Joe Bonamassa has been running these things on for years, I think it's kind of incredible that he's got this far. So anyway, yeah, what was I saying? I found that when I did this hearing test, whenever I did it, that maybe I'd gone down to like 15k. So the hearing tests generally go from 20 hertz up to 20,000 hertz. Now I was kind of worried, because I thought, well, I'm losing quite a significant amount of my top end, right? Because 20k to 15k. It turns out that Igor from Line 6 told me this, that between 20k and 10k, that's just an octave. And if you know, can hear like a 15k, that's like super, super, super high stuff. 20k is just a little bit higher than that, you know, like an octave, half an octave. It's not the most useful information. So all the way down to sort of 10k, I think if you've still got that, then obviously look after it, but you could still get by, I think, with this stuff. It is kind of what I found after first of all being worried, and I got my wife to do the same test, and my brother, and you know, their hearing was better than mine in terms of like what they could still hear. And I think this is an intensely personal thing as well, because this is one of those things when you're dialing in your tones or you're finding things that work for you, that everyone really has their own kind of EQ on their ears as well, right? That you don't really know about. Like maybe their left ear even might be more damaged than their right, or less sensitive. It's just kind of an interesting thing. Anyway, we've got ears, protect them. What did Joe Bonamassa say? Look after yourself, kids. So yeah, in the comments he's saying 7 amps and they are 100 watts if you must know. So all of his amps are 100 watts. But yeah, I think this is just a reminder for all of us that are playing guitar, and if you're gigging or if you're attending gigs, I presume if you're watching this channel, you're either a guitarist or lost, or maybe a bassist, I guess. But yeah, and it's not just like cymbals and stuff like that that are potentially going to damage your ears. It's like, don't forget bass and stuff like that. I when I did the like research on that video I did, there was a study that they did on chinchillas, and actually bass like exposure to bass sounds causes hearing damage in the upper range as well. So it's not like all sounds that you're sensitive to are the ones that are going to damage you. So like I imagine that you, if you're like me, might be quite sensitive to like cymbals and stuff like that, where there's like a lot of, I don't know, what would be like 4 or 5 or 6K, like that sort of range. But actually the lower end stuff is also causing damage. So it's worth, I think, investing in some protection. I think as well of like Mick and Dan on that pedal show, because they have the dB meter. I think maybe these dB meters might be something that could be more useful in our lives in general. But like if you're exposing yourself to these incredibly loud amps, which they are, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like I think at a gig, it's maybe super necessary to be super loud sometimes. And I think it's part of why Joe Bonamassa and Robben Ford sound so good. But we want Robben Ford and we want Joe Bonamassa to be able to continue gigging, and we don't want them to be deaf. So I think it's a message for all of us, isn't it? Like, protect your ears. Instead of buying that next drive pedal or something, get a decent pair of earplugs or in-ear monitors. And that's another thing as well. With in-ear monitors, I think people have a tendency to run them quite high. And what I've learnt to try and do with in-ear monitors is put them like really low, like volume-wise, so that you're mostly using them to block out the other sounds, and then start to bring them in a little bit, and your ears will adjust to that quieter sound rather than slamming them louder and louder and louder, because I think that can be a really efficient way to damage your ears too. But get some earplugs. Joe Bonamassa's back to about 90% hearing was the last that I'd heard on this. Hopefully going forward using some protection. I think there's some amount of recovery that ears can do, but there's some amount of this stuff which is just inevitable anyway. So it's just a reminder. We've got to be careful, innit? Cheers for stopping by.